first time Elias saw Serafina, she was nothing more than a whisper in the wind, a fleeting glimpse of white dress against the grey dunes, and a shock of red hair like dying embers in the cold hearth of the storm. He'd been watching her for weeks from the shadowy depths of the ocean, not with hunger, but with longing. Her loneliness echoed his own, and in the vast emptiness of their solitude, they found a strange solace. He had been drawn to her soft, sad song. It floated up from the shore like a wounded bird, piercing the silence of his underwater world. It spoke of a pain so profound it resonated with the ache in his own heart. For Elias was no ordinary sea creature. He was an amphibious monstrosity, banished from the sea by his own kind for his unnatural fascination with the human world. Now he lived out his immortal life alone in a cave beneath the waves. His only companions, the ghosts of his memories and the mournful cries of the gulls. And then one day, driven by an impulse he could not understand, he crawled out of the sea. The sand scraped against his leathery skin like 1,000 tiny knives. And when he looked back at the receding water, he saw her, standing there with a shawl wrapped tightly around her, watching him with eyes the color of the stormy sea. Their gazes locked, and for a moment, time stood still. He wanted to speak, to tell her of his sorrow, of his exile, of the unbearable weight of his existence. But all that came out was a strangled croak. She took a step back, her hand flying to her throat as if to stifle a scream. Fear flickered across her face, quickly replaced by a strange determination. Then she did something that surprised her. She took another step forward and held out a hand to him. He stared at the offering, unsure if he dared to trust it. But there was something in her eyes, a depth of feeling that transcended his fear, that beckoned him closer. And so he took her hand, surprised by its softness, its warmth. And in that touch, he felt a spark of hope ignite within him. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't so alone after all. From that moment on, their days followed a strange rhythm. Every morning, he would watch her from the sea, his heart aching with a longing he couldn't understand. And every afternoon, she would come to the shore, bringing with her food and books and stories of the world beyond their little cove. He listened, entranced, as she spoke of bustling markets and moonlit dances, of laughter and love and all the joys he had missed while dwelling in his dark cave. She, too, shared her fears with him, the loneliness that gnawed at her, the shadows that danced in her dreams. And as the weeks turned into months, a bond grew between them that defied the boundaries of their different worlds. He the monster of the sea, and she, the woman of the land. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he gathered his courage and spoke to her, or tried to. All that came out was a jumble of clicks and whistles. Seeing the confusion on her face, he took a deep breath and tried again. This time, to his surprise, words formed on his lips, rough and awkward, yet undeniably human. "I am Elias," he said, his voice echoing with the sadness of the sea. "And I have lived for a very long time." She didn't recoil at his words or his appearance. Instead, she smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "I know," she whispered, her eyes shining with And so they talked, or rather he talked, for she only answered with gestures and smiles. Yet somehow their conversation flowed, their souls weaving a tapestry of understanding that transcended the spoken word. He told her of his people, the merfolk, and his exile, of his longing for a world he could never truly be a part of. And she told him, or rather showed him, for she had no voice, of her life, her dreams, her fears. As the days passed, their bond deepened. He learned sign language from her, his large, calloused hands moving with surprising grace and precision. And she in turn seemed to learn his language too, for often he would come ashore and find her waiting for him with a new book in her hands, one he knew she couldn't read but which she understood nonetheless. He brought her gifts from the sea, rare shells and pearls, even a small octopus, which she named Inky and kept as a pet. And she brought him books and flowers, roses that smelled of her and reminded him of his mother's garden, which he had forgotten existed until he smelled them again. But as the seasons changed and the leaves began to fall, a shadow fell over their idyllic world. One day she didn't come to the shore, the next day the same, and then 3 days, a week, 2 weeks. He waited, his heart growing heavier with each passing hour. Had she gone away forever? Was he truly destined to be alone? Then one stormy afternoon, he saw her running toward him, her red hair streaming behind her like a banner of defiance against the grey skies. She was crying, her face pale, her clothes torn. "Elias," she cried, collapsing into his arms, her voice hoarse. "You have to help me." He cradled her, his protective instincts kicking in despite her fearsome appearance. When she finally looked up at him, her eyes were filled with terror. "They're coming for me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They don't want me here. Who is coming?" Before she could answer, a group of men appeared on the horizon, their faces grim, their voices echoing with malice. "There she is," one of them shouted, pointing at Seraphina. Elias felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. "Why are you here?" She looked at him, her eyes filled with a lifetime of sorrow. "Because I am not welcome among the living, just as you are not welcome among the humans. Elias, we are both cursed to walk this earth alone." As she signed this, she looked down at her lap, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He reached out to her, wanting to comfort her, to tell her she wasn't alone, but he knew his touch would only frighten her more. So he did the only thing he could. He took her hand and led her away from the men, deeper into the forest. They ran until they couldn't run anymore, until they reached a clearing bathed in the silver glow of the rising moon. There, under the silent stars, she finally broke down, her body racked with sobs, her shoulders shaking with silent anguish. He stayed with her that night, keeping her safe from the wolves that howled in the distance and the nightmares that stalked her sleep. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the clearing, he knew he couldn't keep her there any longer. He had to let her go. He led her back to the edge of the forest, to the familiar stretch of beach where their story began. There, beneath the weeping willow tree, they said their goodbyes. She turned to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, Elias," she whispered, her voice catching, "for showing me that I am not alone." He wanted to tell her he wasn't going anywhere, that he would always be waiting for her, but all he could manage was a croak, and as she walked away, he knew he had only one option left if he wanted to see her again. With a heavy heart, he turned and walked back to his cave, dragging himself through the familiar motions of his solitary existence. Days turned into weeks, and still he waited. He searched the shore every day, hoping for a glimpse of her, but she didn't come. He started to lose hope, thinking he'd never see her again. Then one morning, as he was combing his webbed fingers through the sand, he saw something that made him freeze. It was a book lying face down at the edge of the water. He picked it up, brushed the sand off the cover, and opened it. On the first page, he found a note written in Seraphina's elegant script. It read, "If you're reading this, my love, it means I'm gone. Don't grieve for me, for I've found peace at last. Know that I will always love you, my amphibious prince, even if this world doesn't. With eternal love, your Seraphim." Beneath the words, he saw a sketch of them both, him with his dark, slicked back hair and haunted eyes, and her with her flowing red locks and kind, gentle face. Around them, the words forever and always were carved. He closed the book, tears welling up in his eyes. She was gone. He searched for her every day, calling her name until his voice was hoarse, but she never came back. And so he was left alone once more, his cave echoing with the memory of her laughter, his heart heavy with the knowledge that their love, though eternal, could never truly be. Yet even in his grief, he knew he was blessed to have loved and been loved by her, the woman who saw beyond his monstrous form to the lonely man within.